Hi everyone, welcome back to Tokyo on Fire. Today is July 17th, 2018. Today we're going to talk about the Integrated Resorts Gambling Bill. It's in the upper house right now. There are 5 days left before it's passed into law or shelved off to the side. But before we do that, make sure you hit like, subscribe, or share, and make sure you tell your friends about this if you enjoy what we're doing. Michael, the Integrated Resort Bill, 5 more days left in this extended diet session. You think it'll go?
Oh, well, it's the whole reason why the diet session was extended in the first
32
place.
days to do this, and then it rained.
And then it rained. It rained on their parade, and it rained, and we have to acknowledge that many people lost their lives.
200 people at this night.
At least 200 people lost their lives. Many are still missing. A catastrophic event that normally would be galvanizing the diet to act in a certain way, but it has a full docket already. And Mr. Abe, in fact, took a long time to change gears in order to deal with the tragedy. He was so taken up with his regular business of international diplomacy, he only regretfully canceled a trip overseas in order to handle
In time.
It's not going to affect his ratings in any way. It's not going to affect his image in any way. But he was so taken with his schedule, this extra session, because he can't extend the session anymore, to get all the things done.
That's right. There are 5 days left. They're going to either vote it up or down in the upper house on Saturday.
And they're going to be trying to make the deadline as best they can because they only don't have a choice. They've already done the extension. Now, the bill is relatively straightforward. It's a follow-up to the legalization of casino gambling. Until last year, when the first casino bill first passed, gambling was ostensibly illegal.
Right.
Now, this was a situation that was peculiar because you could bet on the horses, you could bet on boat racing, you could bet on even motorcycle racing. Yeah, and then, of course, the pachinko, which all of these were accommodated so as to be games of chance, games of fun, or contributions, in the case of, let's say, horse racing, a contribution to agriculture. Taking in casinos, which means having foreign investors for the first time, having foreign companies come and build resorts, IR resorts, these integrated resorts, meant that the law had to be changed. And what was peculiar about this law and why the opposition has had a problem with it from the very beginning is that it's not a government law. It's not a government bill, not a cabinet bill. Almost all bills that get passed are put through the cabinet, but this one was from Mr. Abe's, the leader of it, the person who was sponsoring it was Mr. Abe's faction leader, Hosada. And it was simply, it has held up 2 diet sessions to deal with just this legislator's bill. And that has no history in Japanese legislative history. They've held up diet sessions for cabinet laws, for cabinet-sponsored bills.
Right.
But for an individual legislator, it's never happened.
Well, that's why it's so interesting and probably why it's so contentious. Because in a lot of other countries, bills come up naturally through the process. Companies are trying to do something new with the economy. They come up with different ideas, new marketing plans, and they push that up. It doesn't come through the administration.
Yeah, and that's normally the case in many countries. You have legislators proposing bills, and you do legally have that right as a legislator. But very few legislators take it up, and those who do find that their bills are put at the end of the queue. Here, this particular bill, possibly because of the ability of casino gambling to eventually generate political donations to various political parties. Let's face it, it's going to be the LDP and maybe some to Nippon no Ishin, because there's a good chance that one of the resorts will be in Osaka, that these 2 conservative parties will get donations, but mostly because of Mr. Abe has to answer to his faction head.
Right.
And that just rubbed the opposition the wrong way, and they've made it a very difficult process.
Right.
And then events got in the way of Mr. Abe's own corruption scandals,
right,
which involve him indirectly, such as the Moritomo Gakuen or the Kake Gakuen scandals. And now we have the national response, which has been very good, to the massive rains that took place in Ehime, and primarily Ehime, Okayama, and Hiroshima prefectures, Hiroshima being the hardest hit.
Right.
That the entire system is hostage to this legislator's bill and all of the ancillary bills that are attached to it. It's been a very strange walk that we've been taking.
Specifically, the Diet, the upper house of the Diet, it's already passed through the lower house. The upper house of the Diet is considering gambling countermeasures. And when they pass that, then the bill is finished and it goes into law.
It's basically a reflection of the kind of controls that have been put on casino entry and exit by nationals, either in South Korea or in Singapore, which is the big model, the Singapore resorts there. It also is the way that you get the women's division of the Sokogakkai, which is the puppet master behind the Komeito, which is the coalition partner of the LDP, how you get them on board.
Right.
If you have a revision of the way that Japan has looked at gambling addiction, to revive it as to vitalize it as truly as an illness that has to be treated, that there has to be some kind of government intervention. Up till now, it's been largely you bet your family's money. That's your problem.
Right.
Now, by bringing in the casinos, quite paradoxically, what has previously been a private problem is now become a public one.
Right. The thing that's really interesting about the integrated resorts to me is that it's a kind of one-shop stop. It will integrate all sorts of things, theaters, nightlife, bars, restaurants, that sort of thing. And a very small component of it is the casino. But it's kind of, the whole thing is painted over as a casino operation, but it's only a small part of the entire investment.
However, the opposition likes to point out, in terms of pure revenues, that this small area, usually the casino is 3% of the full size of the resort, is usually the figure that the promoters give. That 3% generates the lion's share of the profits and revenues for that particular the resort. We won't say casino because that's tilting away from an objective point of view. They say the casino is part of it, is the one that generates the money, and that's both those statements are true.
The other thing that's really interesting about this is, since the bill was initiated not through the administration but through one of the political parties, is that the actions of lobbyists in engendering and kind of creating this atmosphere so that the bill can sail through has really reached a kind of a high-pitched level. It's also been reported here in Bunshun, one of our favorite, lightning rods of, what's going wrong in Japanese society.
It's a very convenient one because there is, of course, the ban on foreign companies giving political donations, and indeed it is foreign resorts and foreign resort companies like Wynn Resorts.
They have the technology, right? They have the experience and the money.
They have the willingness to actually build these things. There really isn't a domestic group that can handle it, though some of the larger pachinko makers might talk about it, but they don't really want to cannibalize their own business. And the gambling interests, interestingly, the gambling interests here in Japan, the gaming interests, if you want, have been unable to defend their territory in favor of this new casino law, which of course not only will provide them with new competitors for people who want to bet, but also will bring greater scrutiny on the entire industry for the economic damage, so to speak, that it has created, that it engenders on individual families and individual persons.
Right. We've got the vote coming up in 5 days, Michael. What is your guess? You think the bill will go through? You think it'll be stalled somewhere in the process?
There's not much else that anyone can do. It doesn't look like any part of the LDP will defect on this bill. It must be remembered that the first bill managed to split the Komeito. The leadership voted against the legalization of casinos, but let people, particularly in the Osaka region, let their members vote for it. And to my memory, that's the first time that a party allowed its members to vote separately and that did not lead to a party split. The Komeito, of course, is a very special beast, but nevertheless, in most cases, when there is a split vote within the party, that party is no more within a few weeks. We saw that in the instances of the breakup of the DPJ, that one part would want to vote one way, another would vote another, and that would lead to a split. This has been a highly divisive activity, and it's some people might still be against it at this late hour, but it doesn't seem like any of the faction heads, at least, is willing to put his faction out by saying we're against this bill because it's just not at the wrong time, the wrong thing, and it is the wrong time. We have to make that point. The whole story of this was we have to attract tourists to Japan. Now, this was put forward at a time when Japanese tourism to Japan was half of what it is today. And now we talk indeed about damage that tourists do because there are too many of them, at least in certain places. If you go to Kamakura or more prominently Kyoto, it's absolutely wall to wall with people now. There's no need for this anymore. It's just got the momentum behind it. It's a legacy issue, and it's going to pass because of that momentum.
Okay, I agree with you. I think it's going to go through. The LDP, the Komeito coalition partner, also has the sway in the upper house. So if push comes to shove, the vote will go their way.
There's no doubt about that in my mind.
And the other interesting thing is that even if it's here to attract tourists, it's not going to come online for maybe 4 or 5 years after the 2020 Olympics.
And after Abe Shinzo, unless he changes the bylaws of the LDP again, is no longer on the scene.
So is this a pork barrel project? Is this something that would be considered from a political standpoint, something that's going to really kind of get the juices going so that we want this thing to go through?
Oh, no, really? You think that there won't be construction companies that will be able to pass on donations to their...
Absolutely.
This is clearly a money machine for certain politicians, whoever's district it's going to be. Actually operating it, however, is another kettle of fish entirely. 3
sites will be selected. What's this process like? Do you have any insight on?
I wouldn't want to look into it because it's simply going to be grotesque. It's going to be a great deal of mendacious activity, a lot of push and pull within the LDP about who gets what. And as for accessibility from an international airport, in terms of connectivity with other activities of a municipal area, all that will be disregarded in terms of, it'll be just a political gift to somebody who is owed one.
But what we know right now is 2 municipalities will get it, 2 large municipal cities, maybe Osaka, maybe Tokyo, maybe Fukuoka, and 1 regional area, which is, what does that mean?
That means
Okinawa?
It probably means Okinawa, but the Okinawans will be gladly have it. Anything that can loosen their dependence on the Hondo. Anywhere else in Japan, it's a wash. There is a very hard movement within a lot of prefectural governments to try to get a piece of what's really been giving Tokyo, Yokohama, and Kyoto a lot of money. This boom in tourism, that it hasn't been necessarily spread out. There's a big push in a lot of the prefectures. However, with all these prefectures, there will be, with 40 prefectures all competing for it, whoever gets it will not be decided on a rational business market-oriented basis.
Why not? Why is it so much up in the air?
I think it's simply that the real desire for a resort comes from outside. And at that point, it's not part of any plan for any person.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it could be, you put it in Hosada's district, I don't know, that the entire thrust of Japanese politics, at least according to Nakano, the professor at Jochi University, is the privatization of everything right now. And certainly that's been true in the past. We had Tanaka Kakue make sure that Niigata got the first Shinkansen line outside of the Tokaido, even though there's no point in doing that. That was not a very profitable route and still isn't. Nevertheless, who's going to get what resorts? Yes, the urban areas will be there to get foreign investors to come in, and they will basically see a loss on the regional center if they're not pushing for a profitable center.
Right.
Then it's really up for grabs.
Right. The dynamics, though, can you imagine the dynamics of having an integrated resort? I mean, it's going to take time for it to kind of be integrated into the communities, but the impact that that's going to have, not just on the specific area that it's located, but in the area around it too, with that much investment coming in and the influx of foreigners and the amount of money that's going in, that's got to be a great economic engine.
Well, it's certainly going to help real estate speculators. Wherever it's put, we're going to see a huge rise in land prices in the area immediately around it. We saw the same thing when they talked about shifting the capital out of Tokyo.
Sure.
And all these small regional centers, their real estate values went up.
Or Universal Studios to Osaka.
And all of
or
these
Disneyland.
Yeah,
right.
all of these things happen.
Right.
But but aside from real estate developers, I don't see anyone making any money.
The Integrated Resorts Bill is in the upper house of the Diet now. It will be voted on before Saturday, and our vote is that it will go through. Please continue to stay tuned.